for Addamo on the button. He will open it up to 3,000.
And just so everybody knows, I mean, right now these players are quite deep. The blinds are 501K. So Addamo has 375K. That's nearly 400 big blinds. So a hand like 4-3 suited plays a lot nicer here when you're that deep.
You can afford to speculate.
You can definitely afford to speculate. So, and you'll see also when you're this deep, these
like 190 assault,
out of position 3-bets that Brewer just implemented here.
On the strength of 2 queens out of the small blind.
So it was a 3x open, so the sizes are all bigger, and this 19, that's more than 6 times the amount of the
Our screen name is actually like exactly
a lot meatier than we would normally be accustomed to at shallower depths at this stage in a tournament.
That's so funny. Like the same screen name.
So yeah, and normally with 4 high even suited here in a tournament, you would give that up, but playing so deep, a suited connector has a lot more potential, because when you do make a hand, you can win hundreds of big blinds as opposed to 40 or 50 or 60.
And here on the paired 2-spade board, some of that potential is showing itself as Addamo has picked up a spade draw up against queens and tens, and Brewer has followed through for just 10,000, significantly downsized, just a quarter pot the sizing.
Yeah, so Addamo's basically always continuing here, but now against so small a bet, his decision is whether or not he calls or raises. So, let's see what Addamo comes up with.
And the raise is 3x to 30K from Addamo as he poses a question to Brewer.
Do you have anything? And Brewer does have something. I think it's very likely he'll just end up calling this raise to see a turn card.
Obviously, it would be a disaster to inflate the pot further and face an additional raise from Addamo, who does not improve on this 8 of diamonds, given that the board is paired, and certainly 10x is a viable holding for Addamo, and every now and again he would balance by playing it quickly.
So here he's very likely to check. Oh, he already did check, and now Addamo has to decide whether or not he wants to bluff this or take the free card and try to get there on the river. So about a third pot. So if this is called, it sets up, there'll be about 164K in the pot, and Brewer will have 110K back. So it sets up about a 2/3 pot river shove, whether Addamo makes it or if he decides to continue his bluff. I really can't see Brewer giving up at this point with 2 queens. It's just much too strong a hand. And so now we're going to see a river.
Oh, Michael Addamo, you rapscallion, you scamp. All of these words that used to be used in the 17th century. This guy is just making life hard for everybody, including Chris Brewer. And it's just not fair. I just feel for him. I feel for Chris Brewer and all of his ilk. You know what I mean?
I mean, Chris Brewer is in great shape in this hand right now.
Is he?
He's got queens. The
Sure.
guy's got only
You're
a
talking
spade.
about in terms of statistics. I'm talking
Yeah.
about his emotional state.
Oh, that's completely
He's in hell. It's Michael Addamo.
different. Yeah.
Michael Addamo is willing to trust himself post-flop so much that he called 19K pre-flop with 3-4 of spades.
I mean, wow.
I mean, he is in position,
But come on.
and they are deep.
Yeah.
But
they're
that's
not that deep.
That's 6.5x of the open. Like, that's huge.
It's like a 4.5 to 1 stack to pot ratio from here on out for Brewer's effective stack. Like, it's only because Addamo I'm sure position's part of it, but also because he's who he is, that he can probably get away with this profitably. But like, very few people in the world can successfully call this amount with this hand and have this be a good idea.
From a technical, iterated game perspective, the one advantage this certainly has is that Addamo clearly has board coverage in almost every spot, right?
Yeah.
Like, now all of his opponents who's going to play over and over and over again on these high rollers know that all of the board is his. He can have any part of it. I'm sure he's just going to flat with aces sometimes to protect that as well.
Also, by doing this, and of course this is live streamed, everyone gets to see it. I'm sure they all watch it. I'm sure they all talk about it. Like 3-betting Michael Addamo at any point early in a tournament is not going to get a fold if he's got position anyway. So like attacking his button opens isn't a good idea doing it light, or you're going to have to really go for it. You have to put in a lot of chips to try and win the pot. So you need to know that. I think that's good for Michael Addamo overall.
Yeah,
right?
and what else is good for him is he's always going to have like twice the amount of chips that you have, no
It
matter what,
seems like
whenever
it.
the hand starts.
Yeah.
So we get this flop. Brewer continues. Seems like you just kind of have to continue this board in an elite field with most of your range, if not all of it. Queens is for value. Obviously, can't fold to this raise. What do you think about the raise? 30K over 10.
I mean, my initial inclination was surprising, like really surprised that he raised this hand. It's so cheap to call. You're in position. You still have chances to bluff turn and river if Brewer gives up with overcards or something like that later on. By raising here, we open up the possibility of, getting it shoved in our face, although you think that would rarely happen on this
really
pair
not going to
board.
happen with overpairs.
Yeah.
If Brewer has a 10 maybe or 5's full, which, is rare. It's not going to happen that often.
My initial thought, too, was that I was surprised at his size, that it seems so small.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you like to talk about how it seems like he's doing it off a Brewer's bet rather than the pot. However, as we'll see on the turn, I think there's a little more going on here, which is one of the things that makes him elite.
Right. He's trying to keep his options open. He also may believe that this is a relatively, if not fully binary decision for Brewer, where Brewer's going to fold all the same hands for 45K as he would for 30. So why put in that extra money when you have 4 high, even though you do have a flush draw?
Right. Like if Brewer has king, jack of clubs, he's probably going to call once, right?
Yeah, either way.
Yeah. And if he's got king, jack of not clubs, he's probably going to fold either way.
Right. Unless it's spades, of course.
Of course.
So Brewer does, of course, call. The turn comes. It doesn't improve Addamo. Brewer cannot fold, obviously. But what do you think about Addamo continuing to bet? Because this is one of those things where we've come up with a new term for it. It's Sean Wintering, which is interesting because 5 years ago, elite players were not betting on the turn in this spot. Like Addamo achieved a very cheap river with a flush draw. That's something that everybody would be happy to do, it would seem. But Addamo bets anyone. He bets small. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of cool things are happening. That's what I think. Number one, as you like to say, he's keeping his options open so he can continue to be uncapped as he continues through this hand now and gets to the river, which by checking, he's basically saying, I don't have a 10.
Right.
Right. So now it's going to be hard to rep a lot of rivers with a big bet. Like most people, I think, give up here, not even give up, but take the free river card. Right. Because it's like, do I really want to put all these chips in and do all this stuff? No, Addamo keeps his options open. That's number one. Number two, by betting 32K, it's super tiny. It's just 2K more than his raise on the flop, which we thought was small anyway.
Yep.
Right? He continues to preserve Brewer's stack size enough on the river, if Brewer were to call, which of course he does, that now if you want to shove the river, Brewer's not pot committed.
Yep.
This is pretty brilliant, too, and I think this goes back to why Addamo's size is so small on the flop. Not just all the other stuff we were talking about in terms of the binary decisions, but also because he has to bet tiny to preserve, even on the turn, to preserve Brewer's stack.
Yeah, this is really elite level sizing and thinking through the sizing.
Yeah.
And Sean Winter seems to be the pioneer of this, which is why we call it Sean Wintering. But it is, at first glimpse, feels like you don't really have to bet here. You could just take your 20%. You got there cheap. Congratulations, man. But this way, Addamo is probably it's just probably a better expected value play overall. He, like Jonathan said, he's uncapped. Now he can still represent everything that he wants to represent. Whereas if he checks, he's basically saying, I only win if I hit my flush.
Right.
There's pretty much no way for me to win other than that.
Right. And like, what else does he even have? Like his hand is pretty much face up if he checks too.
Right.
Most of the time.
So there's some brilliance here,
Yeah.
for sure. Now Brewer, it seems like has a pretty obvious call, but we played around with the idea of maybe shoving a hand like this.
Yeah.
It would be simply equity denial. We're never getting called by a worse hand. It could be a real disaster and we could be out of the tournament. And I think overall I still lean towards not doing it, but I think when the stack to pot ratio is going to be as such, I think it's okay to shove here with a hand just to end this thing and win a huge pot sometimes.
I mean, there's going to be a bunch of cards on the river that we are going to lose to one way or another, right? If a spade comes, we basically can't win the hand, right?
Yep.
Because either Addamo's got us or he's probably going to, I mean, he's got us now,
Yeah.
right? He's either got a 10 or a spade almost always.
Yeah, almost
right?
always.
So that's bad. That's 9 cards. If Addamo has 2 spades in his hand, that's 9 outs. Over cards, we're not going to feel great about, even if they're not spades, because that could be part of Addamo's flush draw,
Yep.
right? Like a king of not spades, an ace of not spades. So that's now 15 cards. That's a reasonable amount of the deck. I mean, we still have more of the deck that's safe for us, for sure. The queen of spades is maybe a perfect card for us.
Sure.
But we could also just take down a huge pot right now if we shove it. It's something we should at least strongly consider.
Yeah, but I totally get calling. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
me too.
The link in our pinned tweet is very important to you right now. because even if you're already on Nitrogen Sports, they are moving to Nitro Betting, which means you have to sign up again. But don't worry, it's very easy, and there's a lot of great benefits.
Yeah, by the way, the site is exciting and fun and colorful. It's beautiful. But also, like they have March Madness brackets. Now they have brackets for everything. Like Super Bowl squares. Now they have squares for everything. This is all on Nitro. It's great. It's fun. But you got to use the pin tweet to get that Poker Guys monthly tournament and all the other cool stuff that you get.
Even if you already signed up for Nitrogen Sports, use the new link, and we will see you there.
And that river is an ace. Addamo has no showdown value whatsoever at this point. Now faces another check from Brewer. And oftentimes when you have no showdown value, you do tend to skew toward ambitions of winning the pot.
It seems pretty likely he's going to bluff here, given that he decided to bet the turn, and the ace is actually a hand at this point that
sitting down.
Brewer isn't super likely to have an ace after calling a raise and the bet out of position, unless it was maybe the nut flush draw. And yeah, just Addamo has 0 showdown, so he's probably going to make Brewer make a decision for all of that 111K.
And that tile that he put out there was not a bet. That was a time bank being utilized as Addamo mulls over his options. Ace-X suited in spades, especially given that Brewer is unblocking spades, would certainly be an option here, would it not?
Oh, yes. I believe if Addamo hit the ace, he would value bet aces and tens.
Oh, and he is piling it in there. And for Brewer, he definitely knows that some percentage of the time Addamo has busted spades here, and when we're unblocking those spades, it's more tempting to call. The problem now, however, is the arrival of that ace.
Yeah, well, I mean, Addamo can definitely play 3 tens like this, and definitely can play busted spades like this, but the ace actually gives the class of the ace-X suited hands that Addamo might have played this way. Now they're beating him. But one of the questions about that is, does Addamo actually raise, say like ace-4 of spades on the flop to the quarter size bet? Because that hand actually has some showdown, so that might be a flush draw that he flats there. So, there is a question about really how many ace-X suited, of spades Addamo really hits, which is, so that's one of the questions Brewer's trying to work out, in addition to the other questions about 3 tens or busted
look
draws.
at the sizing, Rast. I mean, this is a huge overbet.
Well, no, because Brewer only has 111.
Oh, forgive me. Effective, the 111.
So it's about 2/3 pot.
Addamo doing everything he can to remain stoic and give away nothing in this situation, and I'm a little bit surprised that Brewer's not looking over at him a little bit.
I do feel two queens, and Brewer does not have a spade, which at this point is good not to have a spade. So,
Are we in syndication? Are we watching a rerun of Seinfeld? Like, I feel like I've seen this one before. Michael Addamo winning a hand he's not supposed to win. It just happens in the high rollers every other day or so.
He's the master of his domain, Grant.
Excellent. He's the yada, yada, yada person. Does that work?
No, it does not.
No, is he double dipping? Is that
Well,
perhaps?
I mean, I guess in some ways, Adamo's like, I had 3-4 spades, yada, yada, yada. I won almost all of Chris Brewer's chips, and he made a bad fold.
Yeah.
Like in that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I'm not
did,
saying he actually made a bad fold.
I did the opposite, and it worked out.
Yeah.
You know, like something like that. Maybe that's what he's doing. All right, so how did we get here, and should we have gotten here? Did Brewer do the right thing? And his decision is very interesting here once he checks and Addamo moves in. And there are two major factors here. One is the quality of the river card. How good or bad is it for our hand? And two is distribution. So let's start with one. This is a pretty bad river card, right?
Oh, my God, it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
It's not a spade. A spade is the worst
Yeah,
type of river card.
That's worse.
Now, you could argue that maybe Addamo wouldn't have moved in with trip tens when a spade came because he'd be worried about Brewer having spades, although you'd expect those to show up aggressively previously in the hand a lot of the time. So who knows?
But he also might not move in with trip tens because if a spade comes because he's worried about getting called by worse.
That is also true. So either way, this is a very bad river card, the Ace of Hearts, because Michael Addamo might have the Ace-X of spades in his range. Now, it is debatable to wonder whether or not he should actually move in with that hand for value.
I mean, if Chris Brewer's going to fold two queens without the queen of spades in it, he probably shouldn't be moving in. For
Yeah,
value.
what I'm thinking is that maybe Addamo believes that Chris Brewer made a mistake by folding two queens without
Maybe.
the queen of spades because of Chris Brewer's distribution, which is the second piece.
Yes. Yes. So distribution really matters here, of course. It always does when we're trying to make these decisions. But it really shows up interestingly here. And this is one of the things we love about distribution, where you can sometimes fold a better hand because it has the wrong blocker, right? Or has a blocker in
Yep.
it. So for example, if Brewer has two kings with the king of spades, that's probably a fold, but two red nines is probably a call because they do the same ultimately against the range that Addamo is repping. Right, they're going to win the same amount of the time, so you got to throw away something. So you want to throw away the card that has the spade in it now, right?
Yep.
So here we are. We're with two queens that don't have a spade in it, right?
Right,
So,
so
we're
it's-
we're unblocking the spade draws.
Huge deal, and we're also second highest by rank because that still matters a little bit in distribution.
Sure.
Yeah, so of those types of hands, we're second highest by rank, and we don't block the spades. I actually think by distribution, this is a call, right?
I think it kind of has to be. It's hard to come up with that many quote better hands that aren't obvious calls, easy calls like a 10.
Right.
Right.
Unless Brewer is doing a lot more slow playing than we're giving him credit for and has just like a ton of trip tens in his 3-betting range pre-flop that he slow plays all the way here.
I mean, I could really see him slow playing the tens post flop once he gets raised.
Yeah.
Even the best tens, I could see him doing that to give Addamo all the rope in the world. So, but even so, he just can't have that many in his 3-betting range compared to all these other kinds of hands.
Right. The pairs are so obvious. They make so much sense. So
Yeah.
it does feel like maybe he made a distribution mistake, and maybe that means that Addamo maybe would be moving in with the ace-x of spades in general,
Right.
just because he'd expect a player like Brewer to call with queens without a spade.
I am super curious to see what the solver thinks about this because
Yeah.
I'm with you ultimately. I think Brewer probably is supposed to call here, but man, this is hard and tough, and I don't really know. Tell us, oh great solver, what do you think?
On the flop,
Okay.
Brewer should bet and should use this size. None of that is
Cool.
surprising. Danny did give Brewer the option to bet 3/4 pot. Pio did not like that idea.
Great.
Addamo's hand is preferred as a call. Raising is fine, but Pio prefers to call with this hand. Maybe he prefers raising like the backdoor flush draw or something instead, something with less equity. Brewer's hand is mostly a call versus the raise, but actually does a little bit of 3-betting, which feels just so much like what we would not do in most cases.
Right. I can sort of see why, though, 3-betting makes some sense here, right? And I imagine the solver is thinking something along these lines of when our opponent has a 10 anyway, because of the stack to pot here, like we have, as Brewer, we have like 140K. If we call this raise, the pot's already 100. Like we're getting it in unless a bad card comes, right? And we find a fold, by the way, often incorrectly as we end up doing. But like we're getting in a lot anyway. So this way, if you feel like if you're up against a 10, you're mostly getting it in anyway. So you don't have to protect yourself against that piece. You don't give the bluffs a chance, but you do get to shut out all this other equity. And with queens, there's a lot of potential bad cards that could have equity against us, i.e. an ace, a king, and spades.
Yeah, that's all reasonable. Now, to be clear though, Pio does prefer the call, but it's just okay with 3-betting.
Yeah.
On the turn, this is something that Danny said he didn't understand why this output came out, but it did. Pio actually donks Brewer's combo 47% of the time, which is an odd play.
I mean, I think it comes back to what we were just talking
Yeah.
about, though, right? Like, now that you've called, a lot of players aren't going to have a continue if they don't have a 10 or
Right.
better, right? They're like, okay, you actually have a hand. You're sticking around. You're probably not folding a big pocket pair to this turn bet, right? So I'm going to check it back. And so this way we don't let the spades draw for free, basically.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
That's all I can think of.
But 53% of the time still wants to check.
Yep.
And Addamo is supposed to continue and is supposed to use this size.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the sizing, as we said, was kind of magnificent the way he set it up.
So beautifully small.
Yeah. Brewer can actually check raise 10% of the time. I guess all the same principles that we've always been talking about.
There's only one card to come now.
Yeah.
We can shut you out.
All right, to the old river.
Okay.
Addamo has an auto shove.
Woo!
Just go for it. Just stick them in and hope it works out.
This is like worst hand we can ever have in this spot. Probably actually the worst. Yeah.
But here's the most, and Danny hasn't heard our analysis when he's done the solving, so he didn't know that we talked about this so much, but it's very, very applicable here. Pio checks back the ace-high flush draw that gets
Right.
here as Addamo.
Yeah, this is
So
something we obviously
That's a
kicked around
huge
a lot.
point of contention on how we feel about both players' plays on the river.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We felt like, just to remind everyone, like that basically if like Addamo has to be willing to make this shove for Brewer to be able to fold.
Yeah.
Right. Basically.
With the ace, yeah. But nonetheless, the confusing
go.
output then is that Pio folds Brewer's hand.
It folds it anyway,
despite-
even though it wants a check.
Yeah, so
So interesting.
I can't really parse that. I don't really know
No,
what's going on there.
I find that very odd. Very confusing. I mean, if you want to take your head and bend it into a bunch of knots, play Michael Addamo, right? I mean, that's what you do. And Chris Brewer decided to do that, and here he is folding the best hand on the river after all the chips seem to go in at every other street. What do you guys think about how these guys play this hand? Addamo, at all streets makes plays that we can at least have long discussions about. Brewer's decision to play the hand passively post-flop, completely understandable. I think I would probably play it the same way, maybe on every street even. But the solver doesn't always want to do that. Do you want to do that? Do you want to be more aggressive post-flop? Or even, by the way, I guess you can't be more aggressive pre-flop because he's the 3-better. But post-flop, let us know in the comments.
Nailed the pre-flop thing.
What are you going to do? You can't
If you
say everything
If
perfectly.
you want to make fun of Jonathan, a great place to do it is our Discord. Use the link in the description when you sign up for Discord.